This video is going to serve as lesson 2.2, adding and subtracting fractions, practice packet video. So I'm going to go over the questions that are on the bottom of page number 4, so kind of the bottom 2/3 of page 4, as well as all of page 5 then for this assignment. So in the first couple questions, remember we have to have common denominators in order to be able to add or subtract. So once we have common denominators, we're going to keep the denominator and add the numerators together, always checking that our final answer is reduced. In question number 2, we're going to keep our denominator. 2 plus 3 is 5, and we're reduced. In number 3, keep our denominator. 2 minus 1 is 1, and we're reduced. In number 4, keep our denominator. 3 minus 2 is 1, and we are reduced. Down here in the next one, we have a number line to show you. So we're going to start at 2/8 and we're going to add 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you'll notice that that takes us to 1, or we could also write it as 8/8, but the more commonly accepted is to write it as 1. In the next section, we're going to actually have to make common denominators here. And if you remember from the example in our lesson video that we had, for example, if we had 2 apples and we had 3 pears, in order to add those things together, we have to come up with some sort of term that we could actually join these together. So we could say that we have 5 fruits, because fruit would be able to identify both the apples and the pears. Now, sometimes we are actually able to identify as what one of our original denominators was, and sometimes not. So looking at this first example that we have here, this is kind of a different strategy that didn't necessarily come up in our notes packet today. But one of the things that I noticed is I can actually reduce 12/15. And in doing so, if I divide the top and the bottom by 3, I'm going to get 4/5. And that's kind of nice because that actually created a common denominator for me. Now, with that in mind, I can go ahead and say this is 8/5. If I didn't realize that, but I realized that my common denominator would have been 15, the first fraction would have changed to 12, and then I would have had 24/15, which I would need to reduce to 8/5. You are welcome to leave your answer improper. In fact, that's how I would actually prefer it in this chapter. Same thing here in number 7. I can either change it so I have common denominators of 9, or if you noticed, I could actually reduce this one. And in reducing, divide them both by 3. My new fraction is 2/3. 2/3 plus 1/3 is 3/3, more commonly known as 1. In number 8, I'm noticing these are both even. And I'm noticing 18 and 12 would be pretty icky for me to try and do a common denominator. So I can go ahead and I can actually reduce here a little bit. But if I reduce here, I'm not going to reduce and make it a 12. So you know what? Thinking about 18, I have 18 and then 36. 36 would actually work for both of these. So let's go ahead and make 36 our denominator. 12 times 3, 5 times 3, 18 times 2, 12 times 2. And then 24 minus 15 is actually going to be 9 over 36, which will reduce to 1/4 then. So that actually does work out kind of nicely for me. In number 9, I have 11 and I have 6/9. Looking at 11 and 9, that's even if I reduce this, that's going to make it a 3, and I still have to make a common denominator. So I'm going to go ahead and just say, thinking about 9s, let's actually reduce this. 2/3 is what it would be. So if I'm doing that, 3 and 11, my denominator would be 33. So 3 times 11, 2 times 11. 11 times 3, 8 times 3. And 24 minus 22 is 2/33 then. Kind of a funny one there. At the top of page 5, we have question 10. We do have word problems on this page, and I'm going to be pointing out to you what my special keywords are that would actually help me out then. So Detroit received 8 8/5 inches of snow in the morning. The city recorded 3/5 of an inch of snow in the evening. What was the total snowfall clocked for the day? Total starts with a T, which reminds me of a plus sign. So I'm adding 8/5 inches plus 3/5 inches, and denominators are the same. 8 plus 3 is 11. Because it's a word problem, I'm going to go ahead and change this to a mixed number. 11 divided by 5 is 2. That gives me 10, so there's one remaining. Denominator stays 5. So I would say 2 1/5 inches of snow. Question 11. A recipe for banana pudding calls for 2/3 of a cup of sugar for the flour mixture and 1/4 of a cup of sugar for the meringue topping. How many cups of sugar in all is required to make the banana pudding? So we're adding. We want to know what's our total here. So we have 2/3 plus 1/4. We don't have common denominators here. Thirds and fourths are different. So we do need to create a common one. Thirds and fourths, it looks like I'm going to twelfths. 3 times 4, 2 times 4. 4 times 3, 1 times 3. 8 plus 3 is 11. Denominator stays, and we're going to call this cups of sugar. In question number 12, Jennifer wants to layer her dollhouse pillows in blue and green fabrics. She uses 1/9 of a yard of blue fabric and 4/9 of a yard of green fabric. How many more yards of green fabric does Jennifer use than blue? How many more? So that one's going to be finding the difference between these. More green than blue. So we're going to do 4/9 of the green minus 1/9 of the blue. Ninths, they're both the same. 4 minus 1 is 3. We are going to reduce that to 1/3 yard more. And we do want to make sure that we're putting those labels. Down here at the bottom, we have 4 examples for you, 13, 14, 15, and 16. These are using integer rules. So I'm adding, they're both negative, so I need to create common denominators. 3 and 2 is going to be a denominator of 6. Times 2, make it negative, times 3, make it negative. Keep the denominator. -4 plus a -3 is a -7. In number 14, I see minus. Integer rules, that turns into a big old plus. So 5 and 2, we need to create a denominator of 10. This will become 8/10. This will become 5/10. 8 plus 5 will give me 13. And tenths for my denominator. Go ahead and leave that improper. Question 15, we have a positive plus a negative. So we are going to make common denominators here. I see 4 and 8. So 8 is going to be our denominator. First fraction stays. The second fraction times 2 and make it negative. 5 plus a -6 is -1 over 8. So this we could write just like this, or you could actually write it with the negative out front. Either of them would be good options. Number 16, negative, minus. So we're going to keep, change to addition, take the opposite. Thirds and fifths are different denominators, so we need to create common ones, which would be 15 times 5, bring the negative with it, times 3, bring the negative with it. Keep your denominator. -5 plus a -6 will give you -11/15. That wraps up your homework from lesson 2.2, adding and subtracting fractions with common denominators.